Chandeep, you and I go a long way back. I think, yes, you're
Absolutely.
right. Good 12 to 15 years now. And we both started our careers and journey from investment banking. So,
Can you believe that I did not even know how to make a pivot table?
we could write some fancy Excel, but pivot table was like the weakest point for us.
And I did not even know back then that the life existed beyond Excel formulas and all the cool stuff with VBA macros and financial modeling that we used to do as well. All
Yeah,
of those people, in fact, large organizations as well, they end up becoming a long-standing consulting client for us. So we do a lot of consulting work for them, building models, optimizing their workflows, writing a bunch of code for them in Power BI and in Excel, and just trying to make their lives easy, helping them go back home on time. So. All right, Saurabh, welcome. I'm so happy to do this with you. I think this is the second time that we are doing this. First time was like when we were just like 12 years old, I believe, wasn't
yes.
it?
I think that was the first ever time.
Yeah, it was. I
Yeah.
didn't actually, I mean, we were not 12, of course, but
That was 12 years ago from now.
12 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably around that time. But it is so delightful. And at that time, I believe just did a voice conversation. It was not even video. So I'm so glad to be doing this with you. And I can't believe that how many years have we sailed together since that time. But I'm sure there are a lot of people don't know either one of us. So I'll let you go first. Why don't you maybe talk 1 minute about yourself? That is not boring.
Okay.
And
All right.
I'll then talk about myself, and then we get the conversation going.
Fantastic. All right. Yep. My name is Sourabh, and Chandeep, you and I go a long way back. I think, yes, you're right.
Absolutely.
Good 12 to 15 years now. And we both started our careers and journey from investment banking. So that's where we both started. I have had a career in investment banking, done a bit of strategy, done a bit of corporate finance, kind of a lot of mix into what I did in the life, and then also did a lot of category management work with a couple of large
Absolutely.
Indian retailers, and that's been on my career path. But throughout the journey, that one thing that stuck to me was about data, right? And
Sure.
that is the common glue, I believe, between you and I, is the data. So understanding data, reading it, making sense out of it, using the raw numbers, 0, 1, to
Absolutely.
kind of make sense of business problems. That's something that kept me so excited. I'm really very glad that I'm doing this with you. And about 9 months ago, we started a consulting firm together by the
Sure.
name Goodly Insights. Chandeep, thank you very much for partnering with me. I think we started Goodly way back in 2013,
Yeah,
but
that's
I
right.
think
That's right.
Goodly. In fact, a lot of people don't know Goodly started as a consulting firm, if I'm
Yeah,
not
that's
right,
right.
wrong.
Goodly started as a firm that wanted to do something to make money. Whatever we wanted to lay hands on has to do with Excel and data,
Correct.
and that's what we were offering. We were not even just clear about what we had to offer. We would just pick up work. If we heard the term Excel in the scope of work, yes, we can do it.
Yes,
That's
we
what.
can do it. Yeah, that's what our thing was. And see now where we have evolved. I think Goodly has done really fantastic in terms of building a massive viewership on teaching people Excel and everything around data. You congratulations, you just launched your book on
Thank
Power
you.
Query. So that's a huge shout out, and I think I'm the lucky reader. So I really enjoyed it, and folks, if you're hearing this for the first time, you should definitely see the link below for his book. And if you are a data enthusiast looking to up your skill in Power Query, I think that's one book that you should prefer. So I think I took a lot of time, Chandeep.
That's fine. That's fine. Take it easy.
About you, please.
Sure. There are going to be people who are completely new to this channel, so I'll just give you a quick glance of what I have done so far and how did I get to be here. So I started out as an analyst at an investment bank, and the role involved working with a lot of data and spreadsheets. And somehow that was the thing in my in my life, because I somehow thought that, okay, I'm so cool with spreadsheets, maybe I can make a life out of it and make a career out of it. And then we started off Goodly together, as you just said. And initially, it was just a lot of financial consulting and financial modeling, that sort of stuff. I did not even know, like back then, can you believe that I did not even know how to make a pivot table?
We could write some fancy Excel, but pivot table was like the weakest point for us.
And I did not even know back then that the life existed beyond Excel formulas and all the cool stuff with VBA macros and financial modeling that we used to do as well. Built up the skills around Excel, started Goodly, and then slowly and gradually, it's been 10 years that Goodly has taken a shape in the form of a nice content management company where we just teach whatever I have gained as an experience through consulting and years of training, problem solving, I just teach that on YouTube, and people end up buying. Some of the people end up buying our courses as well. So, and then off late, we've also started this new consulting company, which is where there are still a lot of people who need more than just things being taught to them. So they're going to come and say that, hey, I don't really want you to teach me. Can you just do the damn thing for me? So all of
Yeah,
those
yeah.
people, in fact, large organizations as well, they end up becoming a long-standing consulting client for us. So we do a lot of consulting work for them, building models, optimizing their workflows, writing a bunch of code for them in Power BI and in Excel, and just trying to make their lives easy, helping them go back home on time. So uh,
I've used that punchline many a times for so yes, we kind of do that.
excellent.
So thank you, Sandeep, for that introduction. Why don't we kind of just take a moment and explain what this podcast is going to be about and why we are starting this? Some light on
Yeah,
that.
this podcast is going to be about the discussions that we're going to have around data, but not code centric. The challenges and the problems that business leaders face while making discussions and decisions based on data. Now, what actually goes behind to build up the models or to build up any kind of usable solutions? How does that journey look like? We're going to discuss that. We can talk about several nuances of putting together these solutions for companies, the behavior of organizations and business leaders that can shape their teams and themselves into more data driven decision making people. So that's pretty much what we're going to discuss about in this podcast. But we will do our best to stay away from code and not use any technical terms to explain all of what we have learned. So this is going to be a generic discussion between you and I, where we will talk about several insightful things that come out of data, but not necessarily have the code stuck onto them.
Yeah, fantastic. I think that's a good space where people would really want to know how do they get started with the managing data, right? There is data all around, and as new technologies are coming up, consumer companies are gathering more and more and more and more of data, right? It's so there's a lot of data, but
Sure,
there's a lot of paucity also around how to kind of actually use this data in the right set to make the decision that is required to be made, right?
absolutely.
So that's
I wanna actually start with a very tangible question that I'd like to discuss with you, and I'm hopeful that this is going to be very beneficial for the audiences. One thing that you and I have seen a bazillion times, the problem that comes over again and again and again to us by the business leaders is that how can I see my multiple departments, functions, whatever data sources together in a single dashboard? Like that's what a lot of businesses are trying to solve. They are not like one would not have a single source of data on a SQL or an Excel or a CSV or
perfect.
Tally or any accounting software. That's not the problem. Is the problem is that their data is scattered because there are multiple processes, multiple channels, or whatever multiple ways of selling the product, and they want to take a look at the perspective of all the data together and then marry it and then try to make decisions.
That's right.
My question to you is that is the problem that people say that they're facing. What makes it so hard to do that in the first place?
Couple of challenges, but let me just start with basic fundamental level four challenges that I see most of the leaders face when they are asking their team to build a dashboard that can help them, assist them in kind of make that decision. They have the experience, they have the expertise, is a validation that is required, and many times these validation comes from cross-functional team data that you just mentioned. But when you're designing a dashboard at that level, typically for CXO level, then you have four large problems. Problem number one is about balancing on the granularity of the data. That is to look both at the same time at a 15,000 or a 30,000 feet height view, as
Right.
well as the ability to kind of do a drill down and see. So that's one, right? So leaders often know their business in and out. They want a quick snapshot, but for a moment, if they see any deviation or they find anything that is not making sense, they would also want to do a granularity check, right? So that's one. And this kind of multiplies the problem because the moment we talk about granularity or the smaller grains, then one has to deal with largeness of the data plus multiple sources put together. The problem kind of multiplies. Plus, at the same time, ability to summarize it in a nice way that reader can consume and make decision, right? So that's number one. Problem number two is businesses are ever evolving. No one dashboard can be called as one size fit all.
Correct.
And CEO or a CFO will constantly see KPIs being changing, right? No static KPI. Sometimes it's a focus based dashboard. So identifying the right KPI for that particular moment, or let me just put it this way, how do we make the dashboard dynamic enough to be able to select the right KPIs, right? Which
Hmm.
means some of the KPIs would marry with some other functional requirements. I think that's a coined word that you use often with our client, KPI pairing, which we use,
Yeah,
right?
pairing. That's right.
So KPI pairing and the dynamicity of which KPI to use depending on what cycle of business are we in. So that's the second problem that one has to be mindful of. The third one you actually mentioned in the opening statement, but let me just say that more clearly is the cross domain information. Now,
And
quite often when we do consulting in my previous experiences where I worked, often at a CEO, CFO, or leadership level, you will have data coming in from HR, marketing, finance, and many of these data sources are typically not from the same source. So, in one place, you're using a CRM, the other place, you are using a financial tool, the third place, you're probably using for marketing third party agency support data, and a lot and lot of manual workups, right? A lot of organization for a simple scenario, right? Plan versus actual. So a lot of plan is actually made in Excel,
in
in in
Excel.
in
Yeah.
in paper. Actually, I would call that as a paper rather than a system, and hence, but that's a critical information that management would want to see with married with the ERP data,
Correct.
married with the
That's right.
sales data, married with
That's right.
the marketing data.
That's right.
And while people have done fantastic job in Excel building this massive Excel that
Models.
kind of
Yeah.
reports from different sources, this is a problem, right? As the data grows, as I said, data is growing much faster than the solutions that are available, and that becomes a challenge when you want to marry. Particularly, the challenge exemplifies in this particular stage when you want to review the data in a certain repeatable frequency, like monthly, quarterly. Now, what happens is as the frequency reduces, the workload with the team kind of increases, and we've noticed that people try to segment the data and show because data
Yeah.
will then become larger and larger to be fit in
Right.
an Excel. And then rather than looking at a holistic picture, they will start looking for segment A and segment B and segment C or market A or market B because all together ingrains is not available. Of course, the
Right.
summary is there, but not there. So that's three that I have covered. But this particular last one is something that I have lived as my experience, right?
Go for
And
it.
that's the interpretation gap. Let me explain what do I mean. As my in my role as corporate strategist and as an investor relationship professional for a large real estate retail enterprise, one of the challenge that I always felt with the leadership is this interpretation gap. And what do I mean by that is that the initial ask from CEO seemed more symptomatic than prescriptive. Now, what do I mean by that is that once, let's say, meet a CEO, he most likely is always thinking about growing the business, solving some problem. He's constantly navigating his business through very, very different market conditions. And at that point, when he had an idea that we need some reporting to be done, typically he comes with a problem statement. And his time is very valuable, and there's no very detailed prescription of what he wants. Hey, I want this, 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 this. He just describes, like a patient, his problem, a
Hmm.
symptom. And
Hmm.
the team, I was responsible for converting that into a report or a dashboard or anything that would help him
Sure.
gauge more sense. Now, many times, quite often, I see team leaders or team members doing this thing is they would take this one symptom, build out a report, spend time, dedicate resources, come back to CEO to figure out that that was not what he was expecting, right? And it happens quite often. It happen to me as well. But I kind of found a solution to it, a hack and
Mm-hmm.
a tip that I would like to share here
Mm-hmm.
is that what I did always whenever I was confused and I felt that there is an interpretation gap, right? The complete information is not available with me. What I did was I did a small mock-up, like the quickest, dirtiest, back of the envelope type table, roughly charting out all the KPI and presented a blueprint to the leader back in a very quick succession. So the problem is still in his mind, and a blueprint is being submitted by me.
Right.
And that's the time majority
With
of the cases I see
did you put in
these.
the did you put in the fake numbers there, or were the
No, no,
numbers
no.
real?
I always have the real numbers
Real
because
numbers.
not
Okay.
not not the fake numbers, the real numbers, but not a very elaborate dashboard, not something that has taken some development efforts and team being spending a week's time to develop, because that's too late by the
Hmm.
time. When I gave this small but with real numbers, I always saw the leaders taking that as a blueprint and then
Building further on it.
be building further on that. Actually, then they convert from being symptomatic to prescriptive. They then
I see
become the
that.
doctor of their own problem. And that's the time when you enter with leadership into a consultative building rather than kind of reacting and supplying him what he's asked for. So this
Sure.
becomes like a conversation with him. It becomes much
Sure.
more open. The thought is clear. And then the development time is also much fast because now we are very clear what he wants. We
Sure.
know the longevity of his expected asks, and that kind of helps, right? It's
Mhm.
almost similar to saying that, remember, many times when you go for real estate buying, the real estate kind of shows you something and then says, hey, here is one example. If you need this, this is how your house. And slowly when you start putting jigs and puzzles, the complete new house get pictured up. That I have seen happened with CEO in consultative building the dashboard. So I think these are the four major problems that I face or I feel is a big thing, and it's very hard to balance out. And people have to remember, like, balance the granularity, high level versus low level, prioritization of the
Yeah.
KPI, what is
Evolving of
important.
the metrics and
Yeah,
cross
evolve.
domain information and
Correct.
interpretation gap.
Yes, these are the four ones that, to my sense, comes as why it is so challenging.
Now, you are telling me from the aspect of being in a position where you were employed in an organization, like you were telling me the internal picture. Now, I'm going to tell you that as an external consultant, what do I see it from the outside?
Yeah. Yes.
For almost a lot of projects that I have done, I think one thing that I can completely agree on, which matches bang on, is the clarity of the metrics. Like, for example, if you don't have a precedence of what do you want to see from the data, and you have to
Mm.
figure out a set of metrics on your own, that is a very, very challenging task. Like, think about PowerPoint presentations, and you are presenting something to the very, very senior leadership, like the directors and the board of directors and stuff like that, about the performance of the company. So typically, you would have these slides built up in a certain way where you would just feed the new numbers and you are kind of good to go. But for a growing company, and that too a company where it's a new market that you're exploring, where the metrics are not really set by the market standards and you have to figure out what the metrics are going to be, that is the time when business leaders need to take a step back and not do ad hoc approach to reporting. And the clarity of what do you want to see from the data is the driving force thereafter on every piece of work that is to be done,
Yeah.
because what
Yeah.
do you want to see is going to decide what data to pick up and what
Correct.
calculations to do, what ETLs to do, and all of that. So I believe that still a lot of people don't have a very firm hold on what do you want to see in the data. So that's one. The other thing that I see, and I'm going to give you several perspectives of seeing it from the outside, is that in an organization, IT is responsible for gathering and capturing the data,
Correct.
and business teams are responsible for making sense out of it. The IT's job is going to be, hey, I've built these databases, you can query them, you can ask me, I can send you Excel files, and you're going to be good to go with those Excel files. And now the business has got these Excel files floating around in their inboxes or SharePoints, which contain the data from multiple sources, which are raw in the format. The column names are not ideally the column names that a business person would understand. They are the column names that a database engineer would understand.
Right. It
Uh,
totally doesn't make sense many a times.
yes, and maybe the data that you have in the database is at the transactional level, like the at the invoice level, but you you don't want the invoices. Like, what are you going to do with the invoices? But what you would want is maybe at the SKU level, at the month level, and you want to take a look at
Uh,
monthly performance, or at the week level, things like that. So there is a massive, massive effort which is going to be required by a business person to gather all the data sets which are not speaking to one another from different systems, clean that up, and come to the most simple, viable version that a CEO or a CFO would accept. Ironically, in a lot of scenarios for larger companies, the CEO or the CFO has no idea that how did my analyst get to this, and how much time did it take for him to get to this position where he's currently showing me. And all of that work and happens in Excel, because that is the go-to calculator that companies have bought for their employees, which is sitting on everybody's desk. There is a massive effort. So my question was, what makes it hard? The effort of fighting with that raw data that you have gotten from the IT, and maybe part of the data you're developing in yourself, fighting with that data to conform it into a shape that a CEO would accept is one big thing. On top of that, if the CEO did not have clarity in the first place and you take something to him and he says that this is not what I wanted, all that effort that you just put in for the week or 2 weeks or whatever is going to go down the drain, and you start all over again, imagining what you're going to do in the second iteration is going to get accepted.
And trust me, that's the most common scenario. It
Yeah,
happens. It
yeah,
happens. And that's why I said I'll stress more on my last point is the clarity again, right? The gap.
yes,
We
yeah.
spend so much time only to hear from CEO saying that, hey, good job. And he'll
But
have a
there's
polite
always a
version,
but.
but,
There's a but.
but can you help me with this? So while it's polite, but the entire effort that has gone, it's not waste, of course. But the fact is, it's not productive. It's not
It's not
productive
what he wants.
what he wants, and
Yeah, it's
hence
not what he wants.
the entire effort needs to be redone. I would agree to your point saying that the IT looks the data from a very different lens than a business users, and Excel kind of gives that power to business users to make sense of that,
Yeah,
and that's the
correct.
reason why it's been the favorite tool
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
since
I
ages,
completely agree.
right?
I mean, it's back in the day when I was a young kid, I used to be fascinated by the calculator on my grandfather's desk when he used to work for a government organization. And I used to play with all day. But
Mhm.
turns around that that calculator is now replaced with Excel with far more capabilities that the companies buys it for everybody. And you just have to be good with that, because the amount of ad hoc and wrangling of the data that one would have to get to any meaningful output is leaps and bounds ahead of what a software could give you.
Correct.
And that brings me to one more point. A lot of business leaders, like again, I'm touching base on the same point, are going to get mixed up pretty bad with capturing and analysis of the data. So let's just say that a CEO is stepping into the meeting and try to build some new ERP that is going to give him the ability to capture the data. Now, if you think from CEO's perspective, he would want to go to the last mile. He would want to say that, okay, I not only want this tool to capture the data, but also gives me the reports that I want to see. Now, if you have a solid channel through which you are selling, so let's just say that an FMCG company sells products through mom and pop stores or organized retail or modern trade, whatever. Now, this way of selling is standardized for the company, and the company has made some standard ways of collecting the data that is flowing up the value chain, and all of the data is being stored in a server, let's
Mhm.
say, for example. On top of that, if you are building that in the company, then CEO would want to go to the last mile and say that, hey, I not only want to capture the data, but I don't want to rely on my people because they don't really do a good job of showing me what I need to say. Can the software give me the reports that I want to see? I have seen that happening a lot of times, which is fair. I mean, the ask is absolutely justified from the top executive. But the problem is, there is one part of that work which is standardized, and data is standardized, and the second part of the work, which is analysis, is dynamic. You may have come across 5, 10, 15 different metrics and a certain way of seeing it that is working you for now, but it is definitely not going to work in the future. No, by future, I mean 3 months from now, maybe 2 weeks from now, or maybe just a few days from now, even there for that matter. And the time that it takes to build it as an application in the software is the
Is
time that it is going to be redundant in.
I too see that a lot happening. You're bang on. This happens. This has been almost a lot, and it's just not the business user. Is the product company also promote saying that, hey, I'll capture your
Yeah,
data,
that's
I'll
right.
store your
Yeah.
data, but I will also
Also give
present
you
your data.
dashboards. Yeah,
But let's think about it, man. You're specializing in capturing and maintaining and process flows and all those things. You're in ERP, right? You're storing data, you have a process flow, you're managing the data flow and helping in decision making with the data. But reporting cannot be standardized, right? It is
absolutely.
standardized for a specific purpose, specific time, specific moment, and it will change because market would
100%.
change, requirement, the
100%.
same CEO would change. Quite often, leaders also change,
Also change, yeah,
and
and the
then the
styles
requirement
also
kind of
change.
change.
Yes,
And
yes.
that's the reason why, in fact, I used to always tell this to my IT head, and back in the days I used to tell him that, hey, I really love what you guys do because you guys capture data, but can you please come and just observe the floor and see how many people have Excel opened? And the button that is max being used by your
To
system
Excel.
is download to Excel. And if you ask them, hey, what's the most one important tool that I can give you? They would say that, can you give me a plugin that puts the data right into my Excel? Right?
Excel,
That has
that's
been
right.
the
And I
craziest
will decide what
request.
to do with that.
So I think that's the huge big challenge. But Chandeep, now the world has moved fast in the realm of reporting, analytics, analysis, right? People talk about a lot of tools, right? Let's hear something about what's the solution. What's How is the world change, and how is it going to, what are the
Sure,
tools, what are the methods that will help people be dynamic with the market changing,
sure,
while the backend problem remains the same.
sure. So I think Microsoft understood this problem really, really well. And they understood that if we have to build a solution, it has to be a solution that people can build it from ground up really fast. That's one. And it
Mm,
has to be very, like very, very agile. Like you want to change it, sure enough, tomorrow you have a new thing coming up. If you take a look at, I'm going to maybe talk about the solution, not the solution itself, but I will bring the perspective of the problem in the solution and then talk about the solution. So if you take a look at a typical value chain of the data work for any kind of end report, imagine that the end output is a certain sales report with various metrics and graphs and charts, or maybe a few tables in there and stuff like that. Starts with obviously gathering the data from multiple sources. I'm assuming that the end report is set, it's understood, people understand what do they want to make, and the clarity is there and all of that. But I'm
right.
talking about actual hard work that needs to be done on the computer. The process is going to start with just gathering the data from multiple sources. Now, these could be as nasty as give me the PDFs, where something could be printed in a PDF. These could be email attachments. These could be CSVs, Excel files, which is probably the large majority of the data. Because believe it or not, till this very day, for almost all the consulting projects that I have worked with, business people are not given the access to the database. They
Yeah,
are
they don't.
extracted.
Yeah,
Like the IT person is going to be standing there in between. You tell me what do you want, and I'll go to the server and kind of extract the data and give it out to you as
mm,
many number of
mm,
times as you want it. But I would not give you access to the database.
right.
Nevertheless, I'm saying that now that responsibility of gathering the data from multiple sources, cleaning it up if that requires cleaning, making it ready for analysis is one big gigantic piece of work
Right.
that takes almost all the time. Like, how hard is it to make a pivot table? Not hard. How
Mm,
hard is it to make a chart? Not hard. But
mm,
just prepping the data from multiple sources, it's so goddamn hard. So that's one big piece of work. So what Microsoft did was, I'm sure you know about it, but I'm just saying it for the audiences. But what Microsoft did was they built a beautiful application right within the house of Excel. And it's ironical that the name of the application cannot be found anywhere in Excel. So the name
yeah,
of the tool that Microsoft has built in Excel is called Power Query. And
right.
Power Query's power is exactly to gather, capture, and clean the data from multiple sources and bring it into one single house.
Correct.
That
Mm,
is what Power Query is known for. The problem with Excel is that if you do that in Excel using conventional Excel formulas and all of that things which are there in Excel to help you clean the data, the only problem is that you do it once, but then you will also have to do it again when the new
again,
data kicks
yeah,
in. So
yeah,
the next quarter, the next month, the next week, when the new data comes in, you'll have to do the same set of things on the new data as well. But then
correct.
because you are now using this tool called Power Query, which is not, by the way, labeled as Power Query in Excel. It's called Get and Transform in the data tab. Now, once you use that particular tool, what you can have is this insane ability to connect to multiple sources. Now, these could be more generic sources like Excel and CSV, which are widely known. These could be more complicated sources like Google Analytics, or maybe your SQL Server, or your ERP, maybe your
Mm,
Oracle database, or things like that. So
yeah,
you can
yeah.
connect directly to that, suck the data, and then start to clean it, and then you will have it in one single place. So
And
that's
by the way, this tool, let me just mention, is not very new. It's not like it's just
it's yeah, it's
pop.
been around
It's
for a
been
decade,
around for
maybe more
quite
than.
some time,
Yeah,
but trust me, the awareness still at a corporate
yeah.
world is still to catch
Next
up.
to zero, next to
Next to
zero.
zero, right?
Yeah.
People actually, it has the potential to reduce your effort by 80%.
I'd say more than like a 99%, because once you do it, then it's refresh, right?
And it's not like, and many a times when I have spoken about Power Query, people have come back, some of the pro ones, about VBA, and various other solutions. What I feel with Power Query is, again, the word Power Query is amazing. They give back power to the users, business
User.
users, is the ability to mold it when scenario changes, right?
Yeah.
Something changes, and if you have to make a VBO code edit, or if you want to make changes to, a lot of people also build their own small little servers to handle large data. So Excel users are really, really, really doing a lot of crazy work. But then Power Query makes it very easy to change if something in the data changes. Right? It's adaptable. It's highly
I think
dynamic.
there are two factors that help you do that. One is that Power Query is just perhaps the a user interface tool, mostly till the time you discover some programming behind it. And the user interface, like if you give the business person a tool where he can build an automation by clicking buttons, he would just fall in love with you.
Yeah, of
That's
course.
one. And the second thing is that you are giving him Power Query in his house, which is Excel.
Excel.
So he
Yeah,
works
yeah.
there. Why don't just work with there's no licensing requirement, nothing. If you have the most latest version of Excel, I believe Excel 16, Excel 19, and the
Excel 16
subscription
and above, I
yeah,
think you
yeah,
have, and
subscription
yeah,
versions of Excel have like if you're working in a decently sized organization, I really doubt that you would not have Power Query already. And it's just that not it's not labeled as Power Query.
mm,
So it's going to be hard to find if you start looking by that name. But yeah, it's there in Excel, and you're giving him that tool to build automations right in the house of Excel where his primary work is done. So that's absolutely brilliant about Power Query. Now, we were scoping out the flow of the data work, and one part of the data work was this massive effort of cleaning up the data to make it ready for any kind of analysis.
and the repetitiveness. So
And the
automation.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So two
that's
things
right.
that he handles very
That's right.
well.
The next part of the work is summarization and aggregation, is what I would like to call it. Now, once
Hmm.
your data is ready, then you generally don't take a look at line by line data. You
Yeah.
generally summarize the data. Like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
show me the total of X by Y in a month. That's
Hmm.
the kind of you analysis that you want to take a look at. Or show me the contribution, show me the best or the top or the worst, or by a certain condition. So these aggregations, although are possible in Excel, which is totally fine, and a lot of people do it. And if you were to just mix Power Query with Excel based work, you're still very, very well off. But the only problem of doing it with Excel formulas is that it is not dynamic. Let me give you a
Right.
very specific example. So let's just say that you come up with a very customized metric of every single month. You have year, you have month, and next to that, you want to say, give me my best selling day. In a
Hmm.
month, give me
Hmm.
my best selling day. Like in the month of January, tell me which day did I sell the most. Now you want to know two answers. You want to know which day did I sell the most. You want to know the date of that day, and you also want to know that, okay, what's my sale on that particular day. So
Right.
two things is what you, and you do some Excel formula jugglery to come to that answer, and you give it to your CEO. He's happy. He claps the hand, and but there is always a but, and he says, this is good, but can you make the same report sliceable by a region? Like, give me year, give me the month of January, but in January, there are 5 regions. Tell me the best selling day of every region. Now, you don't have 2 dimensions, you have 3 dimensions now. You have a year dimension, you have a month
Month
dimension, and you
dimension
also
and
have a region dimension. Now,
correct.
for that person who's working with, for CEO finds it to be simple for obvious reasons. I mean, if you could do it for the month, you could obviously do it for the region as well.
Yeah.
But because you have done a lot of formula work around Excel at the back, it's going to be insanely hard to do that for a region. And you'll have
Yeah.
to come
Yeah.
up with a lot of support work, hidden Excel sheets, formulas to be able
Lot
to
of
get to that
lot
answer.
of layered pivots to arrive at the
Yes.
same result.
Only to find out that if you take that also to the CEO, there is another but coming your way.
Yeah.
Give
Yeah.
me by channel or give me by region or something or the other. This is the only drawback that I find with Excel based approaches, Excel
Hmm.
based
Hmm.
pivots, Excel based formulas, and things like that. Now, to solve that, now Microsoft did a phenomenal job in understanding this, that Microsoft understood that the KPIs don't change. Like if you want to take a look at sales, you want to take a look at sales, but
Hmm.
the dimensions change. Like
Yeah.
I want to take a look at sales by region or by quarter or by month or by year or by half year or whatever. Like you are still taking a look at the sale, the same metric, but the way you are taking a look at, you're changing the dimensions again and again.
Correct. Correct.
And they came up with a brilliant tool called Power Pivot. And Power Pivot, I believe, has been longer than Power Query in the Excel sphere.
No, I wasn't aware about that.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
believe it
but
was there in 2010 or something in the
two,
first versions of Excel. I could be
2000,
mistaken.
yeah, 2010. Yes, that was the first
I
one.
could be
That,
mistaken,
yeah,
but that's what I can think of. So it's been like 14, like 15 now, 15 years almost that it's there, like 1.5 decade. And what this, like, I'm without going into technicalities, is that it gives you with a new formula language, like you have Excel formulas, there is a new formula language for this tool called Power Pivot. And rather than writing Excel formulas, you write this tool specific formulas that are called DAX expressions or data analysis expressions. That's a separate language. And once you start writing these formulas, the benefit of these formulas is that no matter what your dimension is, the formula will change, adapt to that dimension. That's
correct.
the easiest way to explain it. So, coming back to the example that I was quoting, so if you are showing the best selling day of the month, and the best selling day of the month one time has the month and the year dimension, the next time it has the region dimension, the next time it has a channel dimension, the answer will keep on changing again and again and again.
Correct. Correct.
And just pairing these two things, which is, if I could just make my effort of getting new data and cleaning it up to zero, like zero effort the next time I want it, that's one. And if I could just come up with a way where I can slice the numbers or the metrics by any dimension that I want to see, you've literally blown apart a CEO's mind. No matter you give him a chart or you give him a printed out pivot table, you have literally blown his mind, because he's not going to be impressed with the color of the chart. He's going to be impressed with the quality of analysis.
Of course. And I think many times what happened, you're so tired working 90% of your time cleaning up the data, you spend very little time in looking at your data, right?
Yeah,
Because at
true.
the raw form, you're looking at table and you spend hours and hours. And because of this challenge, many organizations have a tier-wise analyst, right? There's someone who's going to do a data cleanup work.
To
His
and
job day in, day out is just cleaning up the data. There's someone who's going to do a lot of pivot work, but even that pivoting is so hard because the moment you start looking at your data with KPI pairings, right? You pair two different KPIs, or you want to do some scenario, or you want to do some clustering analysis, or you want to do some price volume mix analysis. These are complex calculations in Excel, but they are not easily sliceable, right?
yeah,
But
true.
with Power Pivot, that becomes like superpower. So you are actually spending a lot of time being able to then analyze your data because you're not writing formula anymore. Formula once written is done. You're just dimensioning and you're looking your business like the way you should be evaluating. And you're going to your CFO with not just the tables and the charts, but with the analysis that you have found out, right?
Mm.
And should there be a need that CEO or CFO asks for something that is not there, you just can say that, hey, just give me a moment and drag it. And trust me, that kind of brings a
Yeah,
huge wow,
true.
right?
Well, you don't even have to be you have to be present to experience the wow moment that goes inside the CEO's head, because you tell him that I've built the model for you. Here is the calculation. Just drag and drop it,
Now play
and
around.
you're sort. Like,
Yeah,
I'm done.
yeah.
And if you build that for the CEO and you tell him, don't come to me when the month changes, just
Uh,
hit a refresh and you'll
refresh.
start seeing the new
Yeah,
data.
yeah.
I am telling you, I have seen that the CEO is going to lose sleep in a good way for the next 15 days. Like, what the hell just happened? Like, how is
So
that possible?
we started this conversation, this particular piece where we said that many a times leaders ask the data aggregators to build a report. This is what they want when they are saying this. What they're expecting is, hey, I don't want to trouble 10,000 different people and spoil their sleeps. CEOs are humans too. So they want a dashboard that behaves like this. But with productized based of solution, the dashboard is live only for one situation. But with this, it's your own domain. It's the same plain Excel, but now the power that any product company could develop for you has come to your hand, and then that
So
solves. So this
that's
is
right. I mean,
exactly, I think, I feel see you.
if you compress that down from a larger scope and you take a look at a glimpse of what we are trying to put this into picture, is that we have separated out the two domains. The data capturing is still done by your software, your
Yeah,
data engineering team, and stuff like that. They are just solely responsible for warehousing the data and giving it to you when you need it. Now, what you have done is you've been able to build a model that is scalable, refreshable, and flexible,
mm,
that is connected to that source, because the source is now automated. So when the market gives you more sales, your database is getting updated. And
Right.
once your database is getting updated, your analysis is also getting updated. That's like next level thing. And the benefit of developing this kind of solution is that this solution is agile.
Right. Really. I
You
think
want to,
that's the key point,
yes,
agile.
yes,
Right. It's so modular, and your dependency on the tech reduces to next to nothing. Right.
yes, that's right.
It's your same business folks now are doing what a tech folk can do. That's the agility that this has now provided. Right. You
That's
have a
right.
new question, maybe new KPI that you figure out for your market, and that's just a clicks or maybe a few seconds away from coding that
That's
or
right.
writing that, like the way we would do in Excel, right? So
That's right.
everything just the way we do it in Excel, but with the power of an enterprise grade IT team now given in the hands of business users, right?
That's right. That's right. And the benefit is that, I mean, a lot of people would have heard the tool called Power BI. Power BI just scales that to the next level. Now, at the
Mhm.
moment, we have been speaking about this solutioning in the house of Excel with the raw tools like the Stone Age tools. Like Excel, I would consider as a Stone Age tool in the modern IT world, and
Mm,
still works beautifully, right?
good. Yeah, yeah,
It still works beautifully. And Excel has really come to a level where it can handle a lot of complicated tasks, and it's come to that level. But when you think about pairing that with Power BI, which primarily works the same way, because it is actually built on the three very layers of tools that were earlier given to Excel, that were then later carved out of Excel and built a new tool on top of that. So Power Query is there in Power BI. Power Pivot, or the engine of Power Pivot, is there in Power BI. And on top of these two tools, they have built a visualization layer.
yeah.
So rather than actually taking a look at clunky tables and pivot tables, you can make a nice chart and graph and things like that. Now,
Correct.
the graph and the chart, although is something that the senior leader is going to take a look at, sure, but that's not the highlight. The highlight is Power BI brings scalability to that
Yeah,
analysis.
yeah.
Given an example, we build a sales report which is valuable to a CEO, but the same report can be made valuable to a junior level executive that is managing a territory, a
Right.
category, a region.
Yeah.
When the CEO takes a look at it, he wants to take a look at all categories and more aggregated performances. But when a junior guy takes a look at it, he wants to take a look at only that category or only that territory or only that region. Power BI has this ability to lock model, the same calculations, that if a junior guy is opening it, he sees his own data. And if the
Mm,
senior guy is
mm.
opening it, he sees their own data. So you still have done one report, but that one report has become insanely scalable to the entire organization now.
Correct. Correct.
And
That's a huge advantage. That's a
that
huge advantage.
yeah, it's not the chart. Damn, like I get so pissed off when people just lay too much importance on charts and graphs and their colors and the designs and the shades, because that's I've been with around many, many CEOs and CFOs to understand that eventually I am telling you, based on my experiences, that your CEO is not going to give you more money because you used an orange color in your chart.
Yeah.
No, he's going to give you more money if you can come up with an insight that shows him the arbitrage where you're losing money or not making
Not.
enough money
Mm.
through the use of data. And if you can do that, make a tangible impact to the bottom line of the company, you've really unlocked a big promotion for yourself. And
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
not coming through the color of the chart or the design of the dashboard. Yes, it needs to look presentable, but there is so much more intelligence required than just like decoration stuff.
I think the last layer of visualization, largely understood as presenting the data in certain form or fact, needs to be changed, right? It's
Yeah,
all
yeah,
about your ability to read the data, make the sense, and decide on what to show, right? It's the choice that you make for showcasing the analysis, impact, and maybe many cases the result of something that has happened, right? So from that perspective, also, if I were to give Power BI a rating, I think it gives that capability also very user friendly, right? It's made it like a PowerPoint,
yeah,
right?
true.
You can actually, many a times people use PowerPoint to present their ideas, and I feel with Power BI visualization layer, it's not about the graph; it's about the presentation of the idea, the
That's
thought,
right. Yeah.
the
The
message,
exploration.
exploration part, right?
Yeah.
I, in previous role, my team, we used to use Power BI a lot for exploration, like what you mentioned, right? Because it gave the scalability, and I totally correlate with that because I would look at a certain number at a category level, at the whole category level. Same dashboard, my person is looking at a granular his category level, and being able to ask me some of the difficult questions that I
True.
have looking at
True.
my number, right?
True.
Single source truth. I'm not
True.
looking at a different number. Quite often it may happen that your summarized data says something else, but when you go to the grains to figure out answer, you figure out, oh, there's some mistake because you did two different analysis, right? You
Right.
did a summary analysis, something went wrong, but the granular data shows something. With this scalability at Power BI level, it's the same data that you're using, both looking at the same, but in different summarization levels
I
or a
agree.
different cuts,
I agree.
essentially arriving at the same solution together.
I,
So it's like figuring out solution together with the team. I
yeah.
really used Power BI very much to that extent. And I think most of our client of Goodly Insights keep coming back to us with this
Yeah.
scalability
Yeah.
advantage, right?
Yeah.
And they want that more.
Yeah.
So we typically build summary views for a CEO level, but the same dashboard has a detailed
Has
view of
a big view.
everything. So
That's
that
right.
if you have a question of why this number is big or why this number is small, hey, the answer is there. So that's a capability that comes out. Now, Chandeep, we've discussed about this amazing tool. I think there are a lot many other tools as well as beyond Microsoft. They bring up other capabilities. We spoke about this because we feel a large majority of people are using Excel, and there is a natural progression that can easily
Yeah.
happen. Now,
Yeah.
let's say if a CEO, after hearing this conversation of our or a CFO wants his team to be productive, wants to implement this, conceptually, how should be he thinking about? I'm not going to talk about technically what he should be doing, but how should he go about?
I'm going to divide my answers into two parts. One is the technical part. Like if you want to build a team that does all of that for you, then you need some solid training for them. And it's just not one training.
Mhm.
It's going to be multiple levels of the training. You can't expect people to undergo like a 1 day, 2 day training session and expect them to produce magic on the third day.
Correct.
I mean, in the school, we have done the same arithmetic like for 10 years to be able to do some
Yeah.
simple math questions. So our brains haven't changed much. So it's the same brain that we have. It's just that you need to put repetition somehow in the role that people are exposed to that over and over again, no matter they fail. So that is one aspect of the training that needs to come in, a structured training program. And one thing that a lot of people forget about this is that once you train your team, and there are going to be a few shining stars in the team as well, and they're going to then leave the team and you will have attrition. So you'll
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
have this constant wheel of capability building done for your team so that it becomes more like a process rather than
Mm.
actually anything else as well.
Correct.
This is one technical solution to the problem. Now, this technical solution is completely going to fail in the scenario where the team knows how to work with the tool, but they don't know what to produce. So, given an example, I'll give you a very practical example. Multiple times in back in the day when we were working with the investment banking clients, we used to build these forecast models. Now, when you're forecasting, generally your sales is growing based on something else which is growing. This could be the number of users, this could be the acquisition or the traffic or something or the other, right? Now these levers which help you actually grow or gain economies of scale, cost reduction or something or the other, they are based on factors that a junior employee wouldn't have no clue about.
Mhm.
A practical example could be if you are analyzing why your sales is dropping on a particular store. Let's say you run a bunch of salons or something or the other, and your sales is dropping. A CEO would ask this fundamental question about, can you show me the attendance on the roster on those 7 days of period? Were the people
Mhm.
there to cater or not? Now, a junior person is just going to take a look at the sales, like whatever sales happened on that day.
Yeah.
He would have
Yeah.
no idea about why my CEO is taking a look at the attendance roster. So, because the CEO understands that in order to service the customers fast, we need to have adequate staffing on that particular store on that day. So, therefore, he has the vision of taking a look at a certain metric. Now, this needs to come out from the mind of the CEO and needs to be communicated and taught to your people what to take a look at in the data. And there is no better person to do it than the leadership team themselves. So, that is one factor that I believe it to be so critical, which teaches your people how to take a look at the data. And this could be done in a structured training program where we could do it as a training program, or this could also be done as an exercise on the job. So for example, if you're making a decision and you're asking for it, then it's almost a good habit for any leadership team executive to also talk about that, why am I taking a look at this piece of data? It's just not like a command given to your employee that go get me that data, but also why. Because the next time he's going to obviously think of five other things to take a look at and come very, very close to what he would need. Now he knows the tool and he knows the why. That is a perfect
I
combination, I
think
believe.
you're talking about marrying the experience with the data, right? The experience comes from
Yeah,
CEO. He's seen
yeah, yeah,
organization,
yeah,
he's seen situations, and then he's just bringing those experiences and understandings and expertise. Maybe
yeah.
he's from a different segment and sector which needs a new or a fresh set of eyes. But I think while this is being done at the organization, the one gap that I feel in organizations, this is taught on the job, right? Majority of the cases, an analyst joins, he works, he does the grunt work, he makes a first report, and then his superior kind of says, why don't you add this one? And he adds it. Now it's up to a smart analyst to learn that from a boss, but there's no structured training that happens
It
in
fizzles out,
majority.
actually. It
Yeah,
fizzles out eventually in the course of the work, in daily hustle and useless communication or emails and meetings and stuff like that. The actual purpose of why am I doing it? Can I just maybe take a look at, step back and figure out what is the needle moving metric that
correct.
I should track for elongated period of time that actually impacts the business, and finds out the answer why. It just fizzles out in the daily to and fro things in the business end. And that's fair. I mean, there are no two thoughts about it, but hey, you need to bring that into perspective.
But I think there has to be a structured training in organization. I'm sure many organizations must be doing it.
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
is
yeah.
train them on what KPI matters to that
Yeah. So
business, right? What are
when
the other
we
things to look at?
when we do the training section for organizations, a lot of companies, they pay special attention to not only teaching the tool, but also using their own data and building something that has been useful in the past and the reasons behind it.
Hmm,
And I've gone to the extents where the senior people are being the part of the training and then shadowing the training closely with their people and like guiding, coaching. Because if you see your own leadership team being a part of the technical training where
correct.
you're learning the tool,
Yeah.
it's a lot of motivation for the juniors as well to follow the suit and take
I
that
think
thing
it
ahead.
sets the tone. It
Yeah,
communicates a lot of stuff, right?
yeah,
And I'm taking point further. One other thing that I would want to recommend is, and that has benefited me, is when I implement any new tool, or let's say if I am looking at implementing Power Query, Power Pivot, to be very simplified, let's not go very fancy. The first thing that I ever told to my folks is, hey, let's do one thing. Let's pick up the most repetitive work that we do, try and
yeah,
solve that in
yeah.
this, save up the time, and that time I give it to my team for learning and coaching and be with them.
That's a
So now my
brilliant.
work doesn't stop, it's automated. They
Yeah,
see the benefit, so they become the benefactors of their own doing, and
right.
then they realize, hey, this is adding significant value. I'm getting more tea time, I can take longer lunch breaks, still be productive, and learn new things and make next report automated.
Yeah,
Now
you just
that's
freed
the
up from
chain
the
that,
grunt work. Yeah,
yeah, you move away from the grunt work, and I've realized that as soon as you take away the grunt work from people, people are really very creative. You need free mind to think. And all of these things that we are talking about, KPI pairing, you would be surprised how many different KPI pairings they would bring up, to say that,
yeah.
hey, I did analyze this is how it is looking up, does it make sense?
Mm,
And that's where the wow factor for a leader comes in, right? The
sure.
team is
Exactly.
having the bandwidth to think, because now they're not doing grunt work, right? So that's
Absolutely.
one approach. um, I think I would like to recommend to all the leaders listening to this, is that don't just enforce the new tool or the new method. As you said, coach and be there, so set the tone, and just ask for removing the hurdle for the most repetitive work, and then build
Right.
on that.
Right.
And once they see it, they'll repeat it.
Absolutely. Cool. I think it has been a fantastic conversation, man. We did know a lot of these stuff, but putting this into perspectives of what we learned together while we work with a lot of senior executives, and putting it down in a way that just our conversation itself helps a lot of people
Right.
in whatever capacity or whatever problems that they're stuck with, and just getting a sense of or hold of these things is so much helpful. At least I'm hoping for that.
Of course. And for all the viewers who are looking at this podcast, if you feel we need to include something in the next time, or if you have picked up something, if you have an opinion, please feel free to share that. And we'd be happy to make new podcast. In the coming series, we'll cover up many such cases, scenarios,
Yeah, guests, of
um,
course.
and we hope to kind of
Yeah,
bring
more
everything about
guests.
data and business together on
Yeah,
this podcast.
yeah. I think one thing that I'm planning to do is have more guests, like a
Correct.
more real time.
Yes.
These could be people that we've worked with. These could be people whom we have not worked with. These could be people who have made tangible impact to their organizations while looking at the data. That how did they pull that off? Because it's a jugglery between a lot of soft and hard aspects. And the easiest aspect is writing the code or
Correct.
making that report.
Yeah,
But the
I would
hard
agree.
aspect is the behavioral or the mindset change that you have to build in for the other leaders and the subordinate team to adapt to that. And how did they do that? So we will definitely have more guests on the show. But for now, it's just me and Saurabh, and we are sharing what we have learned.
All right. And
Cool.
cool. We enjoyed having this conversation. Hope you enjoyed it too.
Okay, thanks everybody for watching this, and me and Saurabh will catch up with you very soon in the next episode. Cheers.
See you soon.